First of all, thank you all very much for attending this afternoon's session. It is titled Collaborating to Build a Cloud Workforce. And as a quick introduction, my name is Andrew Coe. I'm the director of our AWS Global Education business. But today, we're not here to just talk about technology or some of the actual improvements of technology in education. And if you have those questions, we have plenty of individuals that we can help you as well. But today, rather, we're talking about a lot of the challenges of where all the innovation that are occurring at the front end with all the technologies, machine learning, artificial intelligence, you see all the buzz out there. And that's not necessarily what we're going to talk about specifically, but rather, we're talking about today of what us as potential employers are looking for the next generation of pipeline of individual and the talent, specifically around cloud, that we're really seeking to ensure that there's always continuous innovation and then there's a clear connection between all the skills that are coming out through our universities, as well as the employability and making sure that they are the right fit and as we start to grow into a new economy, if you will. Earlier today, somebody said, in education, there are two types of people. There are, we'll call it visionaries, and then there's victims. Visionaries always look forward thinking and all that. And the victims are always like, I can't do that because of X, Y, Z, you name the reason. Well, the panelists here today are actually the visionaries, but also practitioners. These today, the conversations we're going to have about real examples and real motions that are happening across with partnerships, not just with us, but even with other companies. So I'm excited to do some introductions in 1 minute. I do want to do a quick poll around the room, just as a show of hands, just for our, we'll call it panels benefit, to see who they're talking to, just to make sure that we can cover some of the actual conversations to gear toward you. How many of you are in the higher education or K-12, like in the actual employed by them, like universities or school districts? Oh, wow, okay, incredible. How many of you are ed techs that are focusing in on workforce or even online learning type of organizations at university? Okay. And how many of you are investors looking at seeing what the new trends are? Okay, great. We are going to try to make sure that we have a couple Q&A from the audience as well. So I think it's also a good dynamic if we have that time. So with that said, let me ask our panelists to do some quick introductions, a little bit of background of yourselves, as well as the institution that you actually represent. It'd be wonderful.
Fantastic. Hello, everybody. My name is Martin. I'll translate that for you. That's Martin for the Americans in the room. So I've had a very checkered career. Most of my career, it's always been though at the intersection of technology and education. So for the first 2/3 of my career, it was all high tech, and a lot of that in the United States. So companies like Novell, if you go back that far, testing companies, Prometric, and you can work your way through. I couldn't hold down a job. And then most recently, before I left the shores of America, with Microsoft running global education solutions, where I got to know a lot of the people in this room. And then I jumped ship. I got a call one day from one of the most innovative universities on the planet, the Open University in the United Kingdom. And they said, we're looking for a new president, what they call vice chancellor, will you come do the job? So I jumped ship. And it was at a really interesting time because they were looking to go from Web 1 to Web 2. So I took them on that ride. And then 30 years after leaving my hometown of Melbourne, I got a call, Andrew, from RMIT University saying, would you come back? And I'll talk a little bit later about RMIT, but to put it in size and scale, 91,000 students, 10,000 staff, 5 countries. Yep. So it's sort of the footprint of RMIT University. And it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for coming to this session. You've got a lot of choice. We'll try to make it fun, lighthearted for you. We do a good stand-up act if we get too boring. So. Yeah,
we'll be dancing afterwards. But that's it. Also, Martin has the distinguished honor of having the longest flight to get to this conference. So thank you very much, President Bean, for being here as well.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Patricia Ramos. I'm the Dean of Workforce and Economic Development at Santa Monica College, a little seaside community college of about 35,000 students in Los Angeles. We are one of 19 community colleges in Los Angeles, and we are an independent unified school district, but there's a very interesting trend in the state of California, and that's for for us to do more regional collaboration. So we are collaborating across all 19 colleges in Los Angeles. So if you combine those enrollments, it's about 500,000 students in the Los Angeles area. And I can talk a little bit more about the partnership around those 19 colleges as we get into the session. But thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chad Knights. I'm Provost for Information Engineering Technology, as we lovingly refer to as NOVA. That is Northern Virginia Community College. So to all you UVA fans out there, NOVA, we won't be bringing home an NCAA championship, but we are the largest public institute for education in Virginia. We have roughly 75,000 students. We span 5 comprehensive campuses across the Northern Virginia region with 1 medical education campus. And in that space, what we have is a very large index and need for IT proficiency, cloud proficiency, cyber proficiency. And that's really where our focus has been over the last 3 to 5 years to really try and enhance our workforce capabilities and meeting those needs for our employers. My position specifically as provost is a new position at the college just within the last year. I've got about a 10 years at the college already. But in this position, really what I'm trying to do is bridge that gap between our business partners, our university partners, K through 12, and actually military, as we have about 15% of our student body that's military. And really trying to design programs and pathways and outcomes for our students that meet the needs just not of the employer, but really that student. Because when you have such a broad, diverse group of students, as I'm sure my panelists can recognize, you've got to have different off-ramps for them. Some of them want to go into employment right away. Some of them need a 4-year opportunity to get to the job that they want. And so we're really trying to meet all those needs and blend it together in the best case scenario we can.
Yeah, and thank you very much for all of our panelists here. I know we have all been working together and have addressed that there is a significant amount of demand out there for cloud computing skills. And for those that may not know, LinkedIn has produced, or reported that for the last 3 years, it's the #1 job demand out there consecutively. We are continuously seeing that grow. So within each of your respective communities, universities, and institutions, as we're here to talk about the workforce development, can you talk to us a little bit about the community that you are in? Who are the students, and what are those workforce needs that you've seen in order to get towards some innovative ways of creating some of these offerings?
Sure.
Yeah.
So first of all, just because I was surrounded by so many educators, it goes without saying that this is a workforce conversation. So I'm going to deliberately park research and innovation over to the side for this conversation, but please don't read anything into that. But this is a workforce conversation. And in fact, that's what I want to sort of focus on in my remarks today, is we serve everybody from technical education through to PhD. So we've got the full spectrum, and we do it multimodal. We've got about 2/3 of those are campus-based students, and about 1/3 of those are studying in online or hybrid ways. But what I really wanted to focus on today was the disjuncture, which if you went to the lunch today, you would have heard spoken about at length on the panel, between demand-side economics, employers, and supply-side economics, how we like to deliver our programs, and what we do to actually go after the sort of job shortages that Andrew was just talking about, that innovation creates. In the university, we have a program development cycle of 1 to 2 years. By the time a graduating bachelor gets out, that means from idea of start development, it's 4 years before that person gets into the workforce. In my online business, and my head of online, Helen, is here, we can get a new program to market for a short course in about 12 weeks. And so what I'm going to anchor my remarks in is largely around what we're doing with really breaking the unit of consumption down into bite-size, what often gets referred to as micro or stackable credentials, and making sure nobody gets left behind, making sure that that pays forward the whole way through. And so later in the questions, I'm going to talk about what are we doing to use them to make sure that our campus-based students, the classic 18 to 24-year-old, are leaving with the attributes that employers are looking for, which is so much more than just what they studied from a skills perspective. And then I'm going to talk about that lifelong learner, because a lot of universities see the growth in that area as a threat. I see it as an amazing opportunity. We will become a university serving 16 to 75-year-olds, and I'm really proud of it.
Dr. Ramos, what about you? How is it the things that are occurring out there in Santa Monica, in your area, and some of the workforce areas that you'd like to talk to the group about?
Well, I think that some of the most exciting opportunities for community colleges moving into tech are a result of a couple of things. One is the growth of tech in Los Angeles. We've got thousands of new tech companies that have come into the Los Angeles area in the last 15 years. So for about the last 5 years, we've been trying to figure out what that community college sweet spot is, because we know that tech companies traditionally want to hire employees that have a bachelor's degree, but is that really a necessary credential in order to be a good employee in the industry? Those are conversations that we've been having. And then how do we get the tech companies to begin to relax some of those requirements that they have? We constantly hear the bemoaning of tech companies saying they don't have any diverse talent. They can't find these students with that come from diverse backgrounds to come into their companies. And we think that all they need to do is partner with the community colleges, because that is exactly who we serve, a very diverse population, whether you're talking about demographics, whether you're talking about gender, whether you're talking about age. And so the really interesting thing that is also driving us to create these fabulous partnerships like with AWS is because of the gentrification that we're seeing as a result of all of the tech growth. And it's very problematic. I mean, we got income inequality that is growing tremendously in Los Angeles. And part of the reason why the state is investing so much money into workforce, I've been in this job for 12 years, I've never seen the kind of investment in career education that we're seeing now. But they're not doing it because it's the nice, right thing to do. They're doing it because it's an economic imperative to the state of California. When you look at the state being the 5th largest economy in the world now, if California were a state, we'd be the 5th largest economy. If Los Angeles were a state, we'd be about the 20th largest economy in the world. So when you have these growing income inequality, there's obviously a great challenge to close those gaps. And the only way to do that is to be futuristic and looking at the jobs for the future. So it sounds like all you need to do is figure out what the problem is and what the solution is. But when you're talking about these antiquated industries like education that really do not turn and pivot the way that we need to, it really is taking a tremendous effort. And I'm very hopeful, and I'm very happy that we actually have partnerships like AWS and others. But there's a tremendous amount of work to do, and that's happy to get into that conversation.
I'll definitely say that with Dr. Ramos, it's hard to move anything in any large district. But with individuals like Dr. Ramos, things do get done. So thank you very much for that introduction. Now, Mr. Knights.
Sure, I'd like to take a step on both of those and say these are both beautifully innovative programs and innovative ideas. And I think that's what makes these programs really unique, building on what Martin said, is that it's not so much that we don't know what we need to do. It's getting it to be relevant and moving it forward fast enough so that when the students exit these programs, they actually are still prepared for the jobs that were there when we first built the program. And so I think when we look at the space where I'm in Northern Virginia, what we have is that, just to talk about some of the things around us with the Fairfax, we've got the East Coast headquarters for AWS. Amazon HQ2 is now in the Arlington, in the backyard of our Alexandria campus. We have the data center capital of the world in Loudoun. And so we have a very rich, diverse, and fast-moving technology community that we are trying to serve and keep up with. That's not to mention the military presence that we have within our area. We have the C3 Cyber Command, which is at Quantico. We have, again, Fort Belvoir with Night Vision Labs. So we have all of these rich assets when it comes to the technology industry, and now trying to figure out ways to supply them with skilled employees. Another piece that I just want to touch on real quickly is that because of where we are in the federal workspace, we also have a lot of Beltway Bandits, right? So the Beltway Bandits are those that are going after federal contracts. And still, because of procurement processes, we also have many rules around that require 4-year degrees, right? So university education. And so in looking at that, as we build our programs and as we talk to employers, it's the same idea of bridging the gap of understanding how we can best serve those employers and what skills we can provide our students that make them immediately employable, but understanding that as we build these very intensively applied degrees and applied outcomes, we also still have to keep in mind that we have to have, in some cases, 4-year options for them. And that is not the traditional academic model. You don't take a traditional applied degree and easily progress that into a 4-year model seamlessly without losing time and credit. And I think that's one of the things that we've been earnestly focused on here in the last several months, is trying to build those types of partnerships with our 4-year universities to make sure that as we build these very applied and rich programs, that they still have that capability of transferring to some of these partner schools.
Thank you, Dr. Knights. And also, what's very also important to know is it's not because of the East Coast headquarters HQ2 that the motions of this occurred. This has been going on for quite some time. So the innovation is not as a result, but it just happened to be a good happenstance to now embrace probably a lot more type of those technology type of skill sets that are being requested. Okay, we are all builders. That's a big Amazon thing. We like to build things, and you three are those visionaries, the practitioners, and you're paving the way to build these cloud workforce programs. I'd like to talk for you guys all to talk a little bit about what is it, what are those programs?
Yeah.
And if you could explain a little bit about that in the context of your community and your vision, that would be great.
Yep, no, thank you very much, Andrew. I'm always struck whenever we have a workforce conversation. Back in the 90s, I'm old enough to remember the 90s, I used to talk to employers back in my Novell days about certification. And they'd look at me and they'd go, Martin, I'd say, you really need to train and develop your people, shortages, all of this. And they said, no, Martin, we can't train and develop our people because they'll leave. And I used to always leave a nice pause, and I'd look at them and I'd say, well, what if you don't train and develop them and they stay? And it's actually a really nice way of, because one of the things I think the panel missed at lunchtime today as much as they could have is it was all about recruiting and could you recruit good people, or what should you be doing in the first 9 months or not 9 months. Actually, all of our big challenges, what do we do with our existing workforces to keep them refreshed and up to date and moving forward? And I put that as a backdrop, Andrew, because the three that I wanted to quickly talk about, the three things that we've built. So one of the things I learned when I started FutureLearn with Simon Nelson was that it's a MOOC provider, the best quality on the planet, I believe, is that brands really mattered. In those days, university brands really mattered because they gave market currency. It stood for something. So when we started getting into short courses aimed at existing workers to help them top up their skills to remain relevant for themselves and their families and their communities, we knew brands mattered. And so one of the first brands we came to was AWS. They were already handling a lot of our technology needs, but they were starting to move into some really interesting areas. And one of them was Sumerian, their AR/VR application and development toolkit for augmented and virtual reality delivered over AWS. And what I loved about it was that we co-collaborated. So we, with Amazon, built the global launch of that program to be delivered worldwide out of Melbourne, Australia, with Amazon to help people get started with Sumerian. And it was wonderful because it was true co-creation on the bleeding edge to skate, if there are any Canadians in the room, is what Wayne Gretzky used to say, skate to where the puck is going to be rather than where the puck is now. Another wonderful example of that, of what we built. Apple came to us with their iOS Swift programming curriculum that many of you probably are using in your community colleges. And they said, do you want to run this in your university? And I said, well, maybe, but what I'd much prefer to do is to take your base content and take it online worldwide. We did that in Australia, working with Accenture and Tiger Spike as industry mentors and partners to the students going through. We got 1,500 enrollments almost overnight. But fast forward 1 year, March of this year, and the Singapore government have a program called Skills Future. They're an amazing nation. They've given $500 a year to every citizen to pay towards their professional development. So in March this year, with Apple, with the Ministry of Education in Singapore, we took that Apple iOS programming short course and have now released that into Singapore, funded partially by the $500 credit for every citizen. And next to it, we put a blockchain program right next to it, both aligned to the Singapore government's economic development agenda. In both cases, those brands have been unbelievably powerful for two reasons. We co-created and leveraged the expertise of the owners, authors, and promoters of the technology, and we used the combined brands to create an impact in the market to raise recognition and to give market currency to the value of those programs in the minds of employers.
Great, thank you very much. I think that's exciting. Was there a third one that you mentioned about some of the other?
Yes,
Yeah.
so thank you. I
Yeah.
just didn't know if I had time.
I
Thank
will-
you, Andrew. I'm trying to, I have a highly caffeinated bean here today, so I'm trying to be as pithy as I can. The third one's really cool and will resonate more with the four-year colleges in the room. You may have noticed that Amazon recently has launched their RoboMaker initiative, again powered by AWS. We're now collaborating with Amazon in our Masters of Artificial Intelligence. McKinsey believes that by about 2030, there'll be $15 trillion worth of economic value created through artificial intelligence. So we're building and launching right now a Masters in Artificial Intelligence, and we're plugging in bleeding edge right at the beginning of that initiative, the RoboMaker set of tools and initiatives and simulations. Again, why? It's exactly the same story as what we did with Sumerian. And I've got to tell you that building and co-creating that way from those that are creating the disruption and creating the labor market deficits is absolutely the best way to travel.
Wonderful, thank you very much for that. And Tricia, you guys are doing amazing things, not just even with Santa Monica Community College, but even around with all the other community colleges, and you've built some pretty interesting things as well. And could you describe, that's a slightly even different than what President Bean has described.
Yeah, I would say that if Martin is the master's level, if we're talking about a pathway, and we are at the beginning of the pathway. So we'll just to backtrack a little bit. So Santa Monica College partnered with AWS about 5 years ago to co-create curriculum with our faculty that aligned with their entry-level practitioner certificate. And we thought that it was important to, rather than just encourage students to go and take the coursework. Actually, this was even predated Educate. So before the AWS Educate brand came out, they did have the practitioner certificate. But we think that having college credits tied to programming that students could, take the certification, have the college credits, would be good for the student. And at the end of the day, that's really for us what we're trying to do. We'll see if over time that holds. But for now, we have a 5-course program that aligns to the certificate. What we did is we developed the program. We piloted at Santa Monica College. We started with 40 students, in one semester, and grew it to 350 by the next semester, and shared that curriculum with 19 community colleges in Los Angeles, all of them. So we're all working together to bring the faculty at every campus together. You have no idea. That in and of itself is a feat. And we didn't ask for a dime from AWS. We did the fundraising. The Strong Workforce Program has provided several $1 million over a couple of years. It's one of those things where it's regional funds. All of the colleges have to vote on how to invest those regional funds, and Amazon Web Services came out, for the second year in a row as a #1 funded, the desire to fund that program. So one of the caveats that Amazon had with us is that they would co-create with us. They would help our curriculum stay current, help us iterate on a regular basis, with the caveat that we develop these true pathways, so that we had to partner every high school with a community college. The good thing about that is that every college has agreed to do that, and so we will have at least 19 colleges on board, hopefully within the next year, but more than that, because every community college has at least 4 or 5 high schools, whether it's LAUSD across all of our 19 colleges, or 4 or 5 individual school districts. Just to put it into context, so these are all of the colleges in Los Angeles, most of the community colleges in Los Angeles, -2 in the very north part of the county. But we've got 80 different cities in Los Angeles. So if you can imagine doing regional coordination it takes quite a bit of skill and relationship building in order to be able to do that. So I think that Santa Monica was the right partner for AWS in order to grow this program, invest with us, and we are helping to scale that, not only in Los Angeles, but really across the state now. So all of our northern community colleges want in, but we're telling everybody, just to hold off a little bit, let us get everybody onboarded, and we'll be more than happy to share. And I think that the goal is to get this offered as dual enrollment in the high school, getting these 5 courses that our high school students are already performing at. We already have several high schools that have been in the original pilot, and these students are doing fantastic. They can do this coursework. So the goal would be then to grow this program into programming that aligns with their associates, solutions architect program, and then to bring our university partners in as well. We've got 5 universities, California State Universities in Los Angeles. We've got also the University of California system. So we think that there's room to grow. Our university partners have not yet caught up to us, which we finally feel a little ahead of the game here. And but we're really excited. We think that this is the right direction for us to be going in.
Well, that's fantastic. I think what also that I was most excited about is students are already getting jobs right now. This is not like just some theoretical statistic thing. They're actually getting jobs. And it's not even with Amazon. It's actually with many of our partners or our customers. So it's not just about feeding the talent for AWS. There's actually a significant amount of talent that's needed on that particular topic. So that's very exciting. And opening it up to the high schoolers, I think that pipeline doesn't begin in community college or when you're after 18. It begins much earlier. So having that incentive to traverse over into a 2-year degree, I think is absolutely valuable, so it's wonderful. Now, Dr. Knights.
Sure, so I think we have a saying at Nova where we accept the top 100% of students. So you're not going to find an admissions scandal at Nova. And so what we get is that when you bring in that many students without, you're getting a diverse learning base. Right. All those students aren't going to come in at the same level of academic preparedness. You're going to have different socioeconomic distribution. You're going to have different aspects of understanding what education is and what their needs and expectations are on the exit. And so that was one of the first things we considered when we were thinking about how we wanted to build a program and really infuse what was going to be our target. That's really what we did. And then what we took off from there is that we have a very strong workforce unit at the college who is very into data analytics, looking at the job market within our region. And this is old data as of October for an NSF grant, but we had 100,000 job vacancies in IT last year. And when you look at that, over 30% of them required cloud proficiency. And 6,000 of them required AWS Solutions Architect certification. And so that far and away, that IT space dominates what we see as the gap that we have and that opportunity that exists for where we can bridge into that for our students. And so when we saw that, we looked at this, and we also had the benefit of having Amazon and AWS Academy working with our workforce team, developing their East Coast apprenticeship model. And in that model, there's now 200 AWS employees going through this apprenticeship model in 5 different categories. And what we did is we picked one, which was the track that led to Solutions Architect. And we looked at that and we used that as a model along with other industry and other providers who use cloud services, and many of them used AWS services, to really figure out what the needs were that we had to build into our program. And really what the track was that we saw, we battled with the idea of a certificate versus a degree versus our own credential. We decided on really going after the degree first. So it's a 2-year applied degree. And the reason for this relates to what I spoke to earlier, is that we have to have an opportunity for many of these students to be able to pursue and move forward with a 4-year opportunity. And so in that degree, what we did is we really gleaned the best aspects of what we saw in the apprenticeship and from our employers who told us, and we built that into our degree. And from there, we've then taken some of those components, put them in dual enrollment within our high schools, which will launch. It's a year off now, and then we also now have the 4-year off-ramp. And really what we're trying to do is the tagline in Virginia, it's our tech talent pipeline. We are really trying to take it from that early high school aspect into our program, and then and the outcome is then the student's choice, the 4-year outcomes or the employment outcomes. And I really think that's what we've tried to gain from this, and AWS, Amazon, been a fantastic partner in this process. And I think one of the things that I've seen is the responsiveness that we've gotten. And I think that's really what's been key as we've worked. It's kind of been a growing process together as we've worked with them to infuse some of these concepts into our program. And understanding that not every student that we bring through is going to go and be an Amazonian. We are really building up the foundations of what this looks like. And I think that's another thing that I meant to mention a little earlier, that this idea of cloud that we have, it's kind of like cyber for us about 5 years ago. Nova has a very strong cybersecurity program, well over 1,600 students placed in this. And what we saw is that cyber is not just cyber. Cyber is of your databases, of your network, of your infrastructure. And that's really what cloud is. And we've gone to what we're calling cloudifying our programs, where we have to introduce these aspects of cloud functionality within all these different courses that didn't previously exist. And as many of you are coming in from higher ed, you know that that's not always an easy thing to do when you've got coursework that's been established for 10 years or 5 years or however long it's been, to then introduce these new concepts, especially when the skills are brand new. And Amazon has, again, been a great supporter and partner in helping us see this and bringing us together to do this collaboratively so it's not a single lift. I think it's been a great experience, and I think our students we're just in our first year of this. We just launched the program in the fall. So we've got about 60 students in our first cohort that's moving through it. But again, we look to see this trend kind of with our cyber program, which went from about 60 to about 1,500 in about 4 years.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the benefits of what was created between Northern Virginia Community College and Columbus State Community College, not here, also along with the Santa Monica and the LA Community Colleges, our only one request was make it shareable. This is not something we charge money or anything of that. In fact, we invest it with our AWS Educate program, where there are faculty and students get AWS credit so they can do laboratory work and learn and continue their lifelong learning. I'm going to skip because I know that time is getting a little bit tight, and I want to make sure I can cover this as an important one. As we've had these conversations for a while, and you've had a little bit of taste of what we've been working for quite some time, from this side of the panelists, what, based on the audience, would you like to ask them or put a call out to them and say, here's how you can help, or this is what we need, or this is how we can accelerate together? I'd love to put some call to action or some requests out there as well.
So for the ed techs and the investors, on behalf of the rest of us that are the educators, 3 things we need to realize our vision. Number 1, I want to be able to say before I'm dead, no more exams at my university, which means I need a solution to scale end-to-end every subject, competency-based or authentic assessment for everything that I do. That's one solution I think the sector and the world needs desperately. Second thing I need is a true lifelong learning portfolio. Somewhere where all of us, from the moment we start learning till the time we decide we no longer want to, have a place where we can go and deposit all of our artifacts for our entire life, have reputation attached to those, lock them in a blockchain to share if necessary. But if it's going to be lifelong learning, then we better have an archive or a portfolio that lives with us as a way of demonstrating. I would love if every podcast I listened to got written to a portfolio with blockchain to just show how much I know and despair of American politics. That would be the second thing I would do. And then the third thing that you see growing up in various places but still needs to be matured is AI machine learning applied to real-time labor market signals, community by community, where the gaps and jobs are right now to help inform product development and help me with what I ultimately are there to do for RMIT, which is to get our students ready for life and work, and we step up to that responsibility of getting them all the way to the job where they want, if that's their goal in life. So those are my 3 things, Andrew.
I think you're going to live forever.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
In the cloud.
In the cloud, but that's it. Well, we want you to live forever. That's Dr. Ramos. Now, on behalf of Santa Monica Community College, but also the entire state, what are things that you would say, these are the things we need in order to make sure that this continues and grows and becomes successful for all the students out there?
We need everything that Martin just said that we need.
Yesterday, that's right.
But no, seriously, I think that what I want employers in the room and investors to understand is that community colleges are not what you think they are. Whatever notion you have of what community colleges are and what kind of students go there, put it aside, because I guarantee you it's not what you think it is. We are bachelor degree granting institutions now. We have the whole, lifelong learning upskillers that come. It is not 18 to 24-year-olds. In fact, that's the very shrinking demographic for us. So we are willing to do everything that it takes, bring our faculty on board, hustle and do what we can to create relevant programming, but we need the commitment that the jobs are going to be there on the other side. We've built these programs, our students are getting through them, and while Andrew's right, we have had hires, certainly not at the scale that we're hoping and that we need. To continue to drive our economy forward. So that's one thing, we want to see that those jobs are there. And secondly, we would love specifically for employers to look at community colleges as your talent development system, as a pipeline into your local industries. And if you're in California or wherever you are, I think all community colleges are built pretty much the same. And we're all trying to innovate, again, within a system that is, that doesn't traditionally do innovation well. But the faculty are more than willing, that I've found, and we've got a lot of our faculty here in the room, with the opportunities to learn and grow, that's the extent to which you'll see relevant programming. So if you open up your businesses and come and willing to do externships for faculty, and that means allowing faculty to come into your business and learn what it's about, I think you'll find more than willing participants. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to stay current and continue to iterate at the pace that the market is changing. Yeah. And to remember that it's important that the community colleges continue to exist, because it really is a safety net of our society, at least here in the United States. And if if the for-profits continue to take a source from us, and the 4 years continue to source from us, and then there's nothing left there in that space, then what? Then where are we going to be in terms of public education? So it really is an investment, I think, in ourselves, in our economy, in our society. So so call your local workforce development professional at the community college. Everyone has somebody like me on their campus.
Yeah, absolutely. and for us, we are big fans of community colleges. We hire, and we will also say that our mission with this program is not to just get people enrolled, but it is actually to get them jobs. So our journey doesn't end with just creating this and walking away. We're actually hiring program managers to make sure that we are working with our customer bases or our partners to really bring the opportunities with the actual pipeline that's being developed there. Dr. Knights.
Sure, I'll try and keep this in time here. So I think one of the things that we have that I didn't mention earlier is that at Nova, we actually offer online programming across all of Virginia through a program called Shared Services Distant Learning, where we bring really IT professionals and their expertise into areas of the state where that would be very challenging to host those types of courses and programs. But to keep something like that at scale, especially when we're talking about cloud or any of these IT components, and I want to relate this back to the job market. When you look at most introductory job ads, it says, I want 2 years of experience. Well, I'm a fresh graduate out of school. I didn't have an internship, and even if I did, it was probably 6 months. I don't have 2 years of experience. And so what we want to try and do is try to figure out a way and see tools that help us infuse more on-the-job learning experiences within our courses. And one of the ways that we've tried to visualize that is through a possible adaptive learning tool. Somehow where the student is in that IT course and they're in that programming environment or that architecting environment on the AWS dashboard or your dashboard of choice, and it's a living system that gives that student feedback about the decisions that they're making as they build. And as they build the decisions, it gives them feedback. Well, look at what these outcomes could be versus another set of outcomes, to then give them some of that experiential learning. Because right now, that's being driven by a faculty member, and that faculty member is important, but there's a limit as to how many programs and projects that faculty member has access to. Because when you look at this, it's like an English faculty member. I can only teach so many students because I have to read 3,000 reports a year. And so that's really what I would see as a scaling tool that we could potentially use here.
Yep. And with that, I think we're getting the signal, but I do want to thank our panelists here for the conversation and the discussions. I also want to thank the AWS Educate team, who really have worked over years to make sure that this is happening as well. And we can also continue the conversation. We are having a reception, 4 p.m., Suite 3906, Harbor Tower Presidential Suite, on the 39th floor. So I hope some of you come up. Free drinks, and we can have some conversations with additional free drinks. So hope to see you there. Thank you. Yep.